Good morning once again. I think we can get going. Thank you all very much for your patience. I welcome you once again to another edition of the Filmmakers Forum. And let me thank very much our guests for being with us. Due to ill health and other things, our original panel has been modified a bit. We have with us Akindele Mayowa, Head of Content of Blues Picture, who is standing in for Joy Odiete, who unfortunately is unwell, so she will not be able to join us. Well, like you know, I'm sorry, it was short notice, so we don't have the full profile of Akindele. You will pardon us for that one. But Blue Pictures, which he's representing, is a leading independent entertainment company in West Africa. Blue Pictures partners with global streaming platforms, including Netflix and Amazon, supporting the circulation of African content to international audiences. It has distributed over 500 Hollywood titles across the African market through long-standing partnerships with major studios, including Warner Brothers, Walt Disney Pictures, 20th Century Fox, and New Metro Studios. It has contributed significantly to the development of structured film production distribution systems in the region. So Akindele, thank you very much for being with us. And once again, pardon me that we're not able to read out your profile in detail. We also have with us Kolade Adewoye. Kolade Adewoye is the founder and CEO of Fusion Intelligence Technologies, a Lagos-based software company developing digital solutions for business optimization and operational efficiency in multiple sectors, including film exhibition. He has built systems such as Reach, a platform that currently powers 55% of cinemas across West Africa, supporting data-driven decision-making, performance tracking within the exhibition space. Kolade began his career at Filmhouse Cinemas before moving into the fintech sector. In 2022, he founded Fusion Intelligence Technologies to focus on building scalable technology solutions for African businesses. He holds a BSc in Business Administration from Pan Atlantic University and has additional certification in data science. His work is focused on applying data and technology to improve business efficiency, streamline operations, and support industry stakeholders in making informed decisions. Once again, Kolade, you are most welcome, and it's good to see you.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Our third guest is Mohammed Sedik. Mohammed Sedik is the Associate Vice President at Circuits, where he works on strategic initiative partnerships within the film and entertainment industry. With nearly 15 years of experience, he has built a career spanning acting, production, and executive leadership across the filmmaking value chain. Mohammed began his journey in the industry as an actor before transitioning into roles as an assistant director, producer, and executive producer. His experience across multiple aspects of production has given him a broad understanding of film development, production, and distribution, enabling him to contribute to projects from conception through to audience engagement. In his current role at Circuits, he works at the intersection of technology, business, and entertainment, supporting initiatives that strengthen the film industry's infrastructure and expands opportunities for collaboration. Mohammed holds a bachelor's degree in history and a master's degree in public and international affairs. He remains committed to advancing the growth of Nollywood through innovation, strategic partnerships, and the development of sustainable pathways for African stories to reach global audiences. So once again, I welcome our guests. May I please ask you to have your videos on, if you don't mind?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all so much. Great.
Yeah.
Right, so let's get the ball going. By the way, to the members of the audience, please feel free to drop your questions in the chat box and we'll take them as we go along. Like, you know, this is an event organized by the Nollywood Studies Center of the School of Media and Communication, Pan Atlantic University. And it's intended to facilitate interaction between persons of the industry and, well, the rest of us and amongst themselves. So let's do make it interaction with your questions. So thank you so much. Let's get going. Our topic today is community cinema. Our focus is on community cinemas. And community cinemas have really, we could say, a long history in Nigeria. This is one of the ways in which film really spread in this country. In the colonial period, this is really how people were first introduced in many occasions to cinema by the mobile cinema. And we, of course, still had that in the 70s with persons like Hubert Ogunde going around showing his films in that same way. So it has a long history. However, I think we're all aware that in the last 10, 20 years, perhaps it has practically died out. Okay, we do not have much of community cinemas, but on the other hand, the established cinema houses have become for many people out of reach, tremendously expensive. And there has always been this talk. Why do we not have more community cinema? So let's set the ball rolling by really trying to define what are we talking about when we talk about community cinema. Let me begin with you, Kolade. How would you define community cinema in the Nigerian context? And what makes it distinct from the traditional multiplexes and one-off community screenings?
Okay, so I'll define it as a single location with one screen. Now, that one screen isn't just a cinema, a dedicated cinema. It can be a cinema, a restaurant, a hotel, but it's part of an establishment. So it is one screen and it shows mainly Nollywood content, local content, and then it doesn't show it like every day, like a regular multiplex, maybe 3 times a week, 4 times a week, or over the weekends. But what makes it really unique is meant to be the cost structure around it in a way that it is more affordable than the multiplexes and more accessible to the people in locations that are already serving other business purposes.
Great, thank you very much. Akindele, would you like to add to that? I don't see him here. Okay, well, let me ask Mohammed instead. Mohammed, would you like to add to that, please?
I mean, thank you very much, Mr. Ikechukwu, for putting this together. I mean, it's very good because I mean, let me just start by thanking you because the community cinema is actually supposed to be complementary to our orthodox cinemas that we have. Because when you think about it, how many screens do we really have in the country? Of about 230 million people. So, I mean, Kola is not off the mark with the definition he's given. It's just community cinemas, it's what it is. A place where people can go watch films at affordable prices that does not have the structure of the orthodox cinema. They don't, they do have the payment system, they have all of that, but they don't have all that woofer, all that, all those specifications that you have to get from the authorized body in Nigeria to say this is a cinema. That's just the difference.
Okay, let me narrow down a bit on what both of you have. Sorry, I haven't seen Akindele. I'm not sure whether he's here with us or not. Okay, well, okay, fine.
You can hear me.
Ah, great, you are here. Great. Can we have your video on, please, Akindele? Yes, we can hear you. Would you like to add to that question? Welcome, by the way. Would you like to add something to what Kolade and Mohammed have said?
Yeah,
The understanding of community cinema.
yeah, that's pretty much what the community cinemas is. I think what I would just add is certain community cinemas still have authorization from, from the right authorities, like from the census board, depending on what you're trying to project. Another thing that we also say about community cinemas is the fact that it takes us to the grassroots. It helps, filmmakers get more revenue. They don't have to fight, for the lack of a better word, in the normal general cinemas, fighting for screen times, fighting for attention in standard cinemas. The community cinemas gives you an avenue where you can fight on your own. Your film can succeed based on whatever input you have in terms of your marketing. So pretty much that's what community cinemas is about.
Great. Thank you so much. By the way, pardon me. I realized I was calling you by your surname rather than your first name. I apologize. Now, Kolade, in June last year, Fusion Intelligence launched FilmHub, its flagship community cinema initiative. Can you tell us about that?
Thank you. So the idea was, I think, as mentioned in our bio before, we already power over half of the cinemas in West Africa. And then for us, it was to serve three main purposes. So number one was to
So,
grow.
I'm sorry, Kolade, to interrupt you there, but you just said something which I think if you could throw some more light on. You say you power
Okay.
the cinemas
Okay. Yeah.
across Africa. I don't think many people will know really what exactly is it you're powering. If you can just
Oh,
explain a bit
fair.
on that.
Fair. Okay. Sorry. I always assume people do. So what I mean by powering is we are the ERP, the ticketing software that they use. So if you go to a cinema like an Ebony Life, which is like the most popular cinema right now, the website itself was built by us, but then the software that powers the showtime scheduling, the ticketing online and also in the cinema. So when you walk in, there's that thing that they press to give you your tickets and your concessions. That's also what helps manage their inventory, all of their box office reporting, their financials for the cinema. So that's what I mean by power. So we do
Right.
that for a lot of cinemas. So there's Now, there's Viva, there's Silverbed in Ghana and one other cinema in Ghana. So like we power a good chunk of it. So that's what I mean by power, because strictly speaking, without us, I mean, there would be no, I mean, they can use the foreign alternatives, but if we were ever to have any issues, there would be no proper box office reporting. Like the rest of the industry wouldn't understand what they are meant to earn from the cinemas. So that's what I mean by power. And then one thing we had realized was, I mean, obviously in the bid for us to grow our market share, there will need to be a lot more cinemas. And then that's where we looked at the community cinema routes. And more importantly, a major complaint always kept on coming back. People feeling like, oh, they were sabotaged at the cinema, that the show times aren't great, that the cinema doesn't give young filmmakers a chance, doesn't give unpopular filmmakers a chance. So like, okay, how would this work? So I spoke with Moses Babatokwe, that's the CEO of Now, and it was like, there's this idea that is really hard for a long time called community cinemas, but it's not been possible for a long time. And I asked him why. He said, first of all, the projectors themselves are expensive. So the DCP projectors are expensive. And even if you don't do DCP, even if you do like a new DCP software, you would have to get like a physical hard drive. So right now, for a lot of DCP, in fact, for all DCP, these hard drives are transported physically around the country. So it doesn't encourage scale. And then second of all, he said that um, cinemas are extremely cost intensive. Like we're not even just talking the sharing ratio for tickets now, we're talking the cost of diesel for powering and AC, like Mohammed had said, like the margins are too slim. So what we now decided to do was, okay, since we've already seen this problem, for us, we can expand our market share. And number two is younger filmmakers, especially like people of our generation who are just trying it out. They can have people come into a screen and screen their film, and it doesn't have to be a regular screen. So that's why we decided to now develop our own software called Convoy to handle MP4 file transfer across the country over the internet. So, and yes, another major thing was that because piracy is very rampant in Nigeria, you cannot just send a naked MP4 file to, let's say, 20 community cinema locations. That film is going to leak. So we decided to build Convoy that would ensure that, look, you cannot screen record, you cannot screenshot. It is only that defined laptop that can open that file. The software itself searches through your laptop looking for any new screen recordings that would have happened during the playtime of the movie and deletes the videos to ensure that we are conforming to the standard set by the distributor. And then the distributor can also see, or the film owner can also see that, look, my film has played in this place. And we now merge it with our ticketing software. So, this is how much I'm expected to collect. And then we now added one last part, which is our payment disbursement system that now settles the filmmaker T+1 after all of those tickets are sold. Currently, some filmmakers aren't even settled until maybe 8 to 12 weeks after the release of their film and after the reconciliation has gone on. And we know because we also power on the royalty calculation side, we also have software that distributors use to do the sharing ratio with the cinemas. So we started with a partnership with Cafe One, who is one of our clients on the restaurant side. And based off of that, we now said that, okay, we're going to screen in Cafe One locations. Honestly, the first screening, I think that was August 1, it was terrible. The software that we built itself, like everything that could go wrong, went wrong that day. And the thing just stopped halfway because we were so focused on content protection that we forgot the basics of playback. Like just let it play. But and it was this film, Red Circle, that was by Nora Awolowo. And she was very gracious to trust us with it. I mean, she said, Kolade, my film was not leak. If not, two of us will see it cut. The film did not leak, luckily, and people still watched it back later. But yes, it was a very interesting thing for us. And we also worked in Ojo Navy Barracks, even though we've had to close down that location for now. But what we've been focusing on now is like a major partnership with Cafe One, so that once we have interested filmmakers, just bring your film. It will be protected by convoy. You will screen it. The ticketing is there. You have a transparent dashboard and everything. Sorry if I over expanded, but I needed to explain the whole context of it.
Oh, no. The detailed explanation is very welcome. I even would like to ask a couple of more questions, but I'll come back to you with those questions. Let me turn to Mohammed. Mohammed, Circuits Africa is better known as a streaming platform, but Circuits played a key role in taking King of Thieves Part 2 to community cinemas. What led you to do that?
I mean, thank you for the question. So Femi and the board of circuits, we sat down, we were thinking, all right, Femi, for one, wanted everybody to see his film. He didn't want a situation whereby he wanted everybody in the Southwest to see his film. He didn't want a situation whereby a group would say they were able to see it in the cinemas and then the other ones can't see. And then there's the case of if it's going to come after the cinemas, where next is it going? It's going to streaming. And yeah, let's really talk. How many people can afford data presently to still go and see the film in streaming? Don't get me wrong, there are people. But when you talk about scalability, the fact that as a producer who wants your film to be out there, you need to start thinking about how else can I do it? It's not a competition to the orthodox cinema. It's more of a complementary role, And he thought, there's scalability and then there's affordability. When we sat down and thought about this thing, he was just like, you know what? My father used to do this back in the day in National Theatre Egomu. Is this something we could try out? And all of us just sat down like Bob Moment. You know what? Let's do this. And at that moment, everybody started thinking. The first thing that just jumped out was content protection. I don't know, like as a filmmaker, that's the first thing that just comes into play. And it's like, oh my God, Southwest? Yeah, that's across all the states in the Southwest. How are we going to do that? So we just went on and, we started laying the pipeline, for the possibility of that to happen. But it was pretty much a case of affordability and scalability because we wanted as much people as possible to see Ageshikoli 2 by Femi.
Well, let me see if I can get those details now from Mayowa. Mayowa, Blues Pictures was also involved in this. You handled the distribution. Was this goal achieved in terms of really getting the numbers? Can you give us a sense of that?
Yes, it was achieved like 100%. In fact, he exceeded what we were expecting as something that is starting off as the first, like a trial, and it was just for I think 2 weeks. He even did better numbers than movies that were released during that period. I think another thing I would like to also add is that because it was also scheduled to release in December, it was important for us to take that step so we don't have to go through the hassle of releasing in conventional cinemas. And it really paid off. It paid off. Like he exceeded our expectations.
Now, like how many venues in how many towns or cities? were covered
So
here?
we had close to 30 venues, 30 halls, close to, that's not the exact number, in Southwest, Lagos, Ilorin, Ibadan. We were able to cover about 30 locations.
Yeah,
This
just we had about 30 screens, 30 locations across the southwest from Lagos. In Lagos, I believe we had about 12 or 15 thereabout. We had about 5 locations in Oyo in Ibadan. We had about
Ilorin,
3 in Ilorin. From Lagos all the way down to Ilorin, we had screens everywhere. And each of the halls was a capacity of about 7 to about 1,002, because we had to get halls that were big. We didn't get small halls. For instance, we even used the conventional center. I think it was in Kuto, in Abeokuta. I can't remember now. But the idea was pretty much get big halls and it's 3,000 naira. So the idea was pretty much, if you bought 3 tickets at 3,000 naira, you could still buy 3 tickets and still have, like, it was still not up to 10,000 naira. That was the so you had people who would be like, yeah, it's 10,000, it's not a lot of money I'm parting ways with. And another thing that we did that was good for us was we didn't start selling a week before. It was like a pre-order thing. People had started buying tickets like a month or two before we said, these are the locations, this is where you can even watch, So there was enough time for us to make all that noise, talk about it, and do everything we had to do. It was so cool that, yeah, even though the halls were AC and not everything, you found people like market women, people, all different types of people. They'll just walk in. Eloni, I'm sorry, I don't know if anybody speaks Yoruba here. It was just Eloni, and it's like 3,000 pay, and it's like 3,000. That's a whole film, and it's like, yes, okay. And before you know what's happening, this person go and call these children. No, I think also we benefited well from it because of the period. It was a December period,
yeah.
you know. Um, Disposable income at 10,000 naira for one person or two people was something that you could part ways with. So I think, yeah, that was pretty much it.
Yeah, and I think we were also strategic with some of the locations to make sure it was close to home, close to these market women. They didn't have to spend so much on transportation to, get to the halls. I think that also helped.
now that you've done this, which I may be wrong, but I dare say is your first. This is for you, Mayowa. I dare say this was your first entry into community cinema. Is this something that you now contemplate carrying on with and developing even further?
Yes, yes. We are already putting strategies and systems in place to ensure it keeps going, trying to get the right license from the census board, so we can have some of these locations to ourselves whenever we want to have a screening. We just go to them. We don't have to start going through so we are putting systems in place, and hopefully before the end of the year, we would have another film, and it just goes on like that. Yeah.
I saw something that the minister had actually given a waiver on licenses in this regard. Well, I assume that you're benefiting from that as well. Kolade, let me come back to you. One of the questions I had in mind, because you said you entered into an agreement with a specific organization.
Yes.
Now, are you going to develop similar arrangements? Because I assume that these ones will then be for you fixed locations. And are you going to develop others? I guess the plan will be you are not going to invest in building anything. You're merely going to collaborate with people who already own those spaces. Are you developing similar partnerships across the country for this purpose?
Yes. Yes. So to be honest, the only thing that has been holding us really is some funding. So because to be completely honest, we lost money on the last round of screenings that we did. So we just tried to ensure that, okay, look, let's try and make it sustainable for everybody. But we are trying to work on those partnerships. So aside from Cafe One, so whenever I want to do screenings, they are available, the locations are available. We just sort out financials. We are talking to a few other organizations. We tried speaking to these guys. I think is NBC for Tiger Bar. You know, there are like Tiger Bar outlets in the suburban areas around, sorry, in the urban areas around the country. So we tried speaking to them too. We're in that process for bureaucracy. But what we are basically targeting is areas with multiple locations that are spread across the country so that we can just have one conversation, then move through. And one thing we are really trying to do, which makes it a bit difficult, actually two things make it difficult. Number one, as you had mentioned, there's the regulatory issue, but it's not really an issue. So yes, there's a waiver for community cinema investments. However, you still need to pay that license per year per location. Then there's also the fact that because most people don't realize it, but cinema is more structured than people think. We also need to speak with bodies like the Cinema Exhibitors Association of Nigeria to ensure that we are also on side with there so that there are no issues. We also need to speak with distributors to ensure that there are no issues. So those conversations are going on with multiple stakeholders. We had a meeting with the DJ of the NFVCB last year so that we had a clear regulatory roadmap. We've had meetings with CN to understand what is required to also be a member of the CN so that all of these locations that we partner with these organizations are also members of CN, even though they are not full-time members like the way regular cinemas are, but at least they are within the body so that compliance and regulatory wise, there is no issue. But frankly speaking, all of this, it costs more than we anticipated. And a major problem, and I'm sure Mohammed and Mayowa must have experienced it too, is that a lot of halls will ask you to rent out the space, which doesn't lend to a sustainable model. Because if you are renting out the space and only maybe 5 or 10 people come in, you are basically the one holding the bag. But if it's a revenue share kind of agreement, whereby, okay, based on the 5 tickets sold, location owner, you hold this money, filmmaker or distributor will carry this money, and then whatever the tech provider gets, whatever the aggregator gets, you carry this money too. So that is why, sorry, I lost my train of thought slightly there. So that is the only reason why we haven't yet come out with a lot more announcements. But then another thing is that also on the tech side. So one thing we had realized is it's easier to, for existing content owners, it's easier for them to work with something they are familiar with. So with Convoy, for example, our tech, we've also given it to cinemas to also use so that when a distributor uploads their film on Convoy, our content protection platform, not only is it released to regular cinemas, it will also be released to community cinemas in one fell swoop, making it a more sustainable and systemic thing. But short answer is basically yes, we are talking with a lot of other organizations that have multiple locations, restaurants, hotels, restaurants and hotels in particular.
If you don't mind my asking, you said for the last screening you lost money. Was this due to poor turnout or were there other problems?
Oh, no, it was due to the technical failure that happened on that first day.
Technical failures, right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, you know how actually, so I'll stop saying, so what happens in cinema is first week, the opening weekend is the most important. And so on our opening day, we actually sold, I think, over 200 tickets. And they didn't get to watch the film, and that word of mouth did not help.
Yes.
So that affected the remaining turnout. So that was the only way. And I mean, the only money we actually lost was basically telling our partners that, look, you have unhappy customers. Let us make you whole. We'll refund all of the money and add a bit of extra to just buy some snacks for these people so that when they come back, it will happen. And I mean, it's also why we target hotels and restaurants, for example. Mohammed and Mayowa, in case you guys carry these tips, please give a percentage. But basically, we are targeting them because they are symmetrical. So the main profit engine for a cinema is the food and drink. Now, if I go up to a hall, that means I now have to bring another party that will do food and drink. But if I'm already an existing hotel or restaurant and I have F&B and I have food and I have accommodation also, then it's much easier. It's a much easier conversation to the restaurant to say, oh, I will split money on the tickets. You make 100% on the food and drink.
Right.
Just so that you don't feel like you're losing anything. So those are the kind of partnerships we've been looking at. It's been difficult, but there has been a lot of progress.
Okay, great. Well, Mohammed, I've asked Mayowa already this question. Now that you've done this for the first time, is Circuits Africa now going to diversify fully into community cinema as well as your streaming platform?
I mean, community cinemas for us is here to stay. It's something that we will always do because of, everything that we experienced on the first one. Before I continue, Kolade, I mean, I'd really like to commend you on Convoy. Well done. Well done on Red Circle. I mean, I was hearing and I was following it when it was on. Amazing job you guys did. Well done. Well done. Yes, but I will say that considering, based off of what Kolade has said though, the very first time you get into community cinemas, it is very cost intensive because you need to put all that pipeline in place. You need to put a structure in place. It's new. I mean, it's not like it's new. It's happened in the past, and then it was scrapped off, and then we're just trying to start it up. These hotels will not take a deal with you on half anything. They will not do everybody. It is the money they are seeing now that's their takeaway. And if they don't get that, any conversation you're having, the way you are speculating, they are also speculating. And then they are telling you that, do you know on the December 24th, I even have a show of somebody that is supposed to come and pay 7 million. And you want me to leave that to come and do this. So it's something we will do again. Yes, I'm not going to say it was perfect when we did it the first time. It wasn't. But there were key learnings which we have taken and which we will use. But yes, it is something we will do again. And like I said, community cinemas is not taking the role of, contemporary cinemas. It's only complementing. So even if we're going to do community cinemas, we do not strike out anything that has to do with the conventional cinemas and the streaming. So we will do everything. We will do everything, but we will always do community cinemas every time we have a chance to, if the producer agrees to it.
Right. Now, Mayowa, what, as a distributor, really, well, I would say that you pardon me, if speaking as a layman, I say that the role of the distributor is to find the places already existing to place films. Okay. So, but what can you do as an organization to actually promote? Because I guess for you, it'll be on the one hand, you have to convince a filmmaker that his film will be placed in the community cinema. On the other hand, you have to identify those places, okay, for you to then place those films. Given that we are really just starting afresh in terms of building this chain of community cinemas, if I can be so progressive as to put it like that. Now, what role can you play or can your organization play in terms of now trying to encourage people to invest in setting up these things? Is that something that you will say falls within your scope?
Yeah, I tell you, I don't think there's going to be any much convincing or encouragement, because once they see a pathway that is successful, they will come calling. We've had several calls from prominent people in the industry that would have asked how they can go about this. They want to do community cinema. I even think, even Eniola Ajao, I saw an interview where she was talking about she needs to go to community cinema. She doesn't want to do the conventional cinemas anymore. It's also because of the way these conventional cinemas have treated them. So I don't think there's much convincing that needs to be done. Once the systems are set, once we've gotten all the license, once we've closed out on all partnerships in terms of the technicalities, sound, screens, and all that, we're going to put out, we're going to publicize it, let people know that, okay, we are here, we have started the program, and this is what it entails. But I tell you, people will come for it, people will rush down for it. The only thing is just they need to understand what they are getting into, because they have an idea that you probably would not do some certain kind of sharing that is already set by normal conventional cinemas. It's important that you understand that this is also what you are getting into. It's not just going to be all maybe you make 200 million and everything comes to you and you're not going to do this and not going to do that. So to answer your question, there's no much convincing that needs to be done, just because we've gotten close to 20 producers that have called, well, please, I want to do this, but we have to make sure that systems are set first before we take the next steps, and to also make sure the things we learned from the first one, we rectify them and ensure things are put in order.
Just to follow up on something you said now, the sharing formula. With community cinemas, are we still operating the same sharing formula as you have with the multiplexes and so on?
So that I cannot answer 100%, because, like I said, we are still putting systems in place and trying to see what will work, 100%. But I don't think it's going to be the same as the 50-50, 50-45, 55.
Okay, well,
I mean,
Can I get into that?
jump in there. Yeah, sorry, Kolade, you're saying something?
Yeah, sorry to interrupt you. So I think it will stay, because it's not like the current multiplex agreement was the 10 commandments that was just handed down to us. It only makes economic sense. The location needs to be compensated for the space and overheads that they take, and then the filmmaker needs to be compensated for their film. Where the difficulty is in community cinema is finding the middle ground. So take, for example, we are doing screenings I think one thing I forgot to mention is we've still been doing screenings. So we still did a screening for Red Circle in December, in Ilorin, an open air type location where I think about over 500 people watched it. We got a letter from NFVCB just for that thing alone. And then we still did screenings for short film premieres on the island in Igomu at Cafe One. We are still doing like a nationwide screening for To Adego with Love, also in all parts of the country, Abuja, Lagos, Enugu. So all of that is going on. And the thing that kept on coming back really is a sharing formula. Like Mohammed said, just being able to convince these locations that, oh yeah, I'm not paying you upfront rent, but you share the money, is a Herculean task on its own. Now, there are some locations that believe, oh, I should collect 60% since it is my diesel, it is my generator, it is my AC. And then there are some producers that will be like, oh, I should collect 60% because it is my film that's making people to come here. And the location owner will not argue that, look, your film cannot show in the sky. You need my location to make this work. And then there is also the silent part that hasn't yet been mentioned, but Mayowa touched on it a bit. Equipment, sound. Most of these locations don't have that. So you might not have to rent it. And the question now comes, oh, who bears the cost of renting the speaker, the projector? What we even had to do was we bought a bunch of projectors and we put them inside locations. We put power packs there. We put the speakers, and it cost us about 3 million per unit. And we did about 3 units just to start it out. Now have it in mind, normally if you're fitting out a normal cinema, you're going to spend north of 100 million for that kind of setup. But then we did that. And it still kept on coming back to, oh, look, like, oh yeah, now you've put in the equipment. Then there's now the cost of marketing. That location, if you don't do standee or flyers or whatever, how will people know that it is showing here? Your social media advertising will barely work for community cinema. It has to be somebody like what King of Thieves did. What he did was so fantastic. He went to the market. He carried everybody along, wore shirts. Yes, and I mean the only thing I was thinking of was, God, how much money are they spending on this? That was the only thing on my mind. Like, God, how much money are these guys spending on this? And so, based off of that, it will still come back to the location saying, oh, yeah, without me, this can't work. And because, I mean, I think an advantage we have is we are deeply embedded inside everything that goes on in cinema. So, all of those conversations that happen in cinema will happen in community cinema because because it is cinema, it must be done this way. It is just how the economic realities and the commercials define it that it will be done. So definitely those conversations for the sharing in particular, I do not think is going to be different from regular cinema. Yes, it will not be different from regular cinema. At best, it will be 50-50 to help you with arguments.
I mean, I beg to differ. I beg to differ. And the reason why I beg to differ is because when you look at the community cinema model, to be honest, why would I want to go to a community cinema? The reason I would want to go to community cinema, just as I, initially stated, is because of, affordability, scale, and all of that, right? Which means at the end of the day, it has to be the producer who is the one going to push. Because when you look at it, right, there's little to, I mean, the distribution company definitely will be involved in the marketing, definitely. But at the end of the day, we know that it is the producers that push these films, which means it's the producer's responsibility, one. Now, if the producer knows the pros and the cons of getting into that cinema, or into getting into community cinemas, it's not left for him to, and I feel like it would be an advantage to do community cinemas because you already know your crowd, you already know your crowd, and you already know where your people are coming from. Do you get what I'm saying? So, and the pricing is not the same. The pricing is not, there's a lot of things that are different when it comes to operating a community cinema and operating your conventional cinema. So to now handle it the same way is going to be tricky. And I think that's where we need to now sit down to see, hi guys, yes, this is what is obtainable in the conventional cinemas. To make community cinema sustainable at this point when we are just starting, what can we do to bring more people into it? Because guys, even with our conventional cinemas, we only have about, as our 2025, I think about 333 screens, servicing 230 million people. The numbers will never align. So if we're now saying we want to now add the community cinemas, we need to think about those people in the grassroots first, the audience, because they're the ones that will bring the money that will help us share. So if we don't think of how we will get them to the cinemas, there will be no money to share. Which is the first thing we need to even. The answer is 36. Okay, sorry. You get what I'm saying? Yeah. You have in the US where they have over 30, is it the US or China where they have over 30,000 screens. You have, and I mean, it's not as, yes, the model is the same everywhere, but I do feel like there's a difference, or there's a different way that it could play out with the community cinemas, if that is the model that, a lot of producers want to begin to follow. And I mean, Mayowa is here. He can speak more to it based on the experience he has in distribution. But this is my own thinking, as personally.
No, I totally agree. I totally agree with what you just said because this is like a totally different initiative. If people are still going to be getting the same sharing from conventional cinema, then why even try the community cinemas? So I don't think it's going to be the same sharing. But like I said, systems are still being put in place, and once things are finalized, the entire process should be publicized.
I would have said that the reason for people to want to go to community cinemas is access to the people. Because for me, it seems like you have in a country this size, 200 and something million, and only a very small fraction can actually afford the cinemas. Whereas you have so many people who are interested who do not have sources of entertainment. And if you put this within their reach, what you may not get in terms of individual fees, you will get, given the large scale, the huge volume that we could actually target here, which I think will be truly attractive to any filmmaker, really, because you're reaching more people in that sense. Now, there's a question here. Kolade has already answered, but I'll just read it out so that those who have not seen it can also get it. Helen is asking, what is the minimum number of seats for you to partner with a location for your community cinema model? And Kolade has answered 30 seats. That's the minimum. But do you have a maximum, Kolade?
Safety fire standards. If it's 100
Exactly.
seats, it's have to have at least 2 exits.
Right. Right. Okay.
Yes.
That's why I asked, because that's a major concern. That'll be a major
Yes,
concern.
it is.
Great. Well, let me come back to you. You mentioned that when you had the showing in Jos, you received a letter from the
It was
NFVCB.
Ilorin. It was Ilorin.
I'm sorry,
Yes.
Lauren, you received a letter from the NFVCB. Now, was that because you had violated, in quote, something, or you had?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. I mean, I'd just like to point out that Dr. Shaibu, I consider him a friend. I consider him, I mean, one of the best people in the industry. He tries to remain as unbiased as possible, and it's so fantastic. So when it happened, so what we have is a community cinema waiver license. But apparently, there's something called an open air cinema license, which is
Right.
different. And it's also different from the mobile cinema license. So I wouldn't come out and say, oh, the government hasn't done a great job in trying to unify these licenses the way people always accuse Nigerians of, because truly it was on the NNPCB website. I just never bothered to check. Like nobody bothered to check, but it was right there in like clear screen that you need. So he was like, oh, you violated this. We gave you a waiver. You didn't share data with us. I cannot lie. I was surprised by that too, because I was like, oh, you could have shared data with us. And I'm like, oh, I mean, data is our bread and butter. I could have. It just didn't come to mind to share it. And then he was like, so how would the industry grow if we are all working in silos?
Yes.
Like, I mean, I would envision a world in which us and circuits and other partners work together and in such a way that, okay, look, everybody can come together and get this thing done. And an example I would give, this one is a bit off topic, but like when Universal and Paramount came together to set up their own distribution company called UIP, because they knew individually they didn't have the muscle to handle what they wanted to do, handle worldwide distribution. So for us, we need just people coming together. But back to the thing. So it was because there were different licenses for different areas. And then so we had to sit down and then we explained the cost structure to him. He explained to us this is the existing protocol that exists for it. And so we're like, okay. And then it was like, oh, for places that are, let's say, like 50 locations, sorry, 50 seats indoors, we can give you a special waiver as long as you are paying for the other locations that have, let's say, above 50-seater capacity. So it was a very, very interesting period where we met regulation. And frankly speaking, it was good because people see, oh, regulation, as if there's no regulation, you can make as much profit as possible, which is true. But if there is regulation, it shows you that people have already thought of this. So you are not trying to reinvent the wheel. Just try and work on what already exists instead of trying to build out the wheels again. And I think that's also a problem we've had. We've thought about, we will build it out to build out everything again, even though our specialty is as a tech company. But we're like, oh, let's do this, let's do that, let's do this. When we should actually have partners, including the government, that will get it done alongside us.
According to what I read up on the waiver, it requires to get, I mean, the 2-year waiver for those who are going into community cinema. It requires that the investor has to be new to the field, and also that the investor has to establish at least 5 community cinemas. Now, that notion of establish 5 community cinemas, what exactly does it mean? You have to put up the brick and mortar structure, or it does? So it means that you
Yes.
cannot actually tap into that waiver in that case, because that's not what you're doing.
Well, we found I won't call it a loophole, because it was genuinely an understanding. We're like, we are not the direct investors, but we are partnering with people who already have this real estate and who are not in the community cinema space. So technically, that makes them investors.
Okay.
So we can get the waiver because we are partnering with them for that. So whilst they own it, we have basically should I call it the license to operate it, so we can benefit from it.
Okay. Well, Mohammed, let me turn to you now. Looking at because well, you are very much in the distribution space with the streaming platform and so on. How do you think the one can feed off the other? Do you see that link between the streaming platform and community cinema mutually supporting each other? Or would you say that no, these are catering to 2 completely different audiences and never shall the twain meet?
I mean, I strongly believe that we are catering to 2 different audiences: the streaming audience, the community streaming audience as well, the community cinema audience as well. Like I said, because most of the times when we were on our 12-day community cinema run, we had to be at the cinemas most times to see what was happening, and you could see the people who came. Yes, you have your put together, fresh looking, good looking guys and all of those things. Yes, some of them were there, but most of the people who were there you have people who really don't want to spend so much on data, who don't want to stress themselves doing anything that is technologically disturbing. Pay 3,000, enter, sit on a white chair, get the AC, just watch what you are there to watch, and then leave. If you want to buy popcorn on your way in, it's fine. If you want to buy food on your way in, it's okay. But you also have your streaming audience who don't want stress, who just want that, let me just sit at home, chill. I'll make my own popcorn, I'll make my own food, and I'll just have this quiet time with my family. You understand? So you're catering to 2 different audiences, but can they work together? See, this is what I always say. Everything can work together. It just depends on principles, structures, and how we look at them commercially. You understand? I mean, for so long, I've been saying something about how, certain things are even done in our space. I think that at some point, distributors should even come and say, you know what? For community cinema models, yes, we have certain things as what they are presently, but I still feel like there's something, this word that we call collaboration. I know we say it a lot. I know it is used loosely a lot, but in the real sense of it, does it really exist as much as we say it does? Collaboration. And that's what we need to do, because Mayowa, based on what he's saying about building a structure and all of that, how many of us are going to accept it? How are we going to see it? How are we going to treat it? How are we going to work with it? How are we going to interact with all of that? Kolade is doing a fantastic job, and I didn't even know about it until now. I'm just hearing about Convoy, and he just mentioned something just now, working with circuits, working with Blue Pictures. These are the kind of people, these are the kind of initiatives we also want to hear about. Progressive, forward-thinking initiatives that puts the industry in a place where when you begin to speak in South Korea, in China, in the US, you can stand tall and say, oh, Nigeria, we have a fantastic structure. If you go and talk to this person, what you hear from this person is the same thing you're going to hear from this person.
Okay.
And that's how things need to start to work before we can really say that we want to make these things as we envision them. So I do think, yes, it can work, but there are two separate audiences.
Great, thank you.
So
I guess
to add to that, sorry.
Sure, go ahead.
Sorry, to add to that, like this thing, yes, I'm actually glad we're having this conversation because we thought of this, I think, last year. And to add to that, yes, convoy, that's spelling like protection, convoy to protect you. But so to add to what you said, we look at it as a life cycle. So the way circuits work with Blue Pictures, we work with now, but not exclusively now. We also work with Tribe, we also work with Silverbed, but I have a personal close relationship with the founder of Now. So at least some benefits of having those conversations. I look at it as a life cycle. Community cinema can be that there's a regulatory period in which a film is not meant to go to streaming after it has gone to cinema. I think there's a 60-day or 30-day or 90 days. I'm trying to remember how many days, but I think it's more than a month. Within that period, it can be in community cinemas, which is why for us, Convoy was very, very important. Because as Mohammed said, safety. So if producers know that this software that is being used in regular cinemas, where it did not leak, is also being used in community cinemas, it brings about that confidence. This software that is used to give you your box office numbers in regular cinemas is the same thing used to give you your numbers in community cinemas. It gives you that confidence. And the most important thing we need right now is confidence. Confidence that, look, my film will not leak. Confidence that I'm going to get money. So it would be in that window, based on the film, it would be in that window after it is leaving some screens in cinemas, where it will show in community cinemas, then move to streaming for a different audience. Or for some people that we are working with, they are indie filmmakers. Their films are screening first inside community cinemas. Then the distributor can maybe watch it and see it, and then they will now pick it up for nationwide distribution. And then the logistics costs is easier because it's already on the platform. So cinemas can get it whenever they want to get it after the booking has been agreed with the cinemas. And just to tail off a bit, the question I saw here needs carefully figure out the business model before launching the initiative. So I disagree with that area because
sorry,
you cannot
Kolade,
figure it out. Okay.
Kolade, just for those who may not have seen the question, let me just read it out in full.
Oh, okay.
So that everybody can get the question you're responding to. Heading says, listening to this conversation sounds like you need to carefully figure out the business model before launching the initiative. Making money with micro ventures could be challenging if not well thought out. Okay, just so people have the context of what you're responding to.
So the part I disagree with is Nigerians, we are fantastic at thinking. We can think of the most beautiful ideas. But the area where we lack is the execution. And honestly, the money we lost, I call it school fees money, because it was basically money we used to learn in the school of business that, look, this can work, this cannot work. We already tried working with micro ventures. We already know that cannot work. That's why we're working with more established businesses with a heavier footprint. The problem with that is the lead time to getting a partnership is longer. We've been on a conversation for like 6 months with a few companies now, and it is still going, meet this manager, meet this guy, meet this guy. But it is a lot more predictable. But honestly, we cannot carefully figure out the business model before launching. It has to be as you are going. Like, the business model has evolved 3 times now in the past year. So we just have to keep on going. We will definitely lose money. Like, I'm at the stage where I know, okay, I will lose money on this. But hopefully, long term, it would work. That's the hope, that long term will work out. But definitely, it's not something we can just sit down and keep on thinking. Because, as you said, everybody talks about community cinema. But that's what we are just doing. We are just talking. Like, all of us need to get in the arena, figure it out. I think Mike Tyson said it. Everybody has a plan until you get punched in the face. Now, once you got punched in the face, what is the next step? So for us, that's where we are. So we are just, I mean, you can say we are just winging it. We are just as a crayfish they bend, as condition they make crayfish bend. We are bending, Sha. We are bending, not we shall figure it out. But yeah, that was my answer to the question.
Thank you. Mayowa, let me turn to you. There's something Kolade said about the community cinema being a space for the young indie filmmaker, to begin to manifest him or herself, or to show what he or she is capable of. Is that something in place? I mean, I'm talking about with Blue Pictures. Would you be open, really, if a young, untested filmmaker were to come to you to say, well, I have this film and I would like you to distribute it for me across, okay, maybe at this level. Do you have such a structure that makes it possible for the young, untested fellow to really see such opportunities?
Yes. Blue Pictures is all for the young indie filmmakers. However, we are particular about the content itself. You don't just bring us a substandard content and expect us to accept it because we are trying to help. It's also important that we screen this content to see it's able to compete to some extent alongside other major contents, other major filmmakers. Just like this, the boy who gave, if he brought it to us, that's a brilliant film that we would want to explore. So we are open to it as long as the content suits the market and is a strong content.
Right. Well, Mohammed, let me ask you this question. It's been an I like to look at it as something untested. The opinion that we Nigerians, what we like is comedy. Any other kind of genre of film will not sell. You have had experience with the streaming platform and so on and so forth. If you're going to the level of the community cinema, should this be a concern, given that this is targeted at a specific audience? Should you then be thinking, will the kind of films to be shown be a consideration to take seriously? Or do you think that that's a platform where any genre could work? In this country, I'm talking about.
You have to think about it deeply. Nigerians have a lot going on for them, so you can't come and be telling them one person is suffering and is carrying something on his head. Nah, you really need to think about it carefully, because the community cinema is where people want to go, loosen up, have fun. They want those moments when they're walking out of the hall. Did you see that point where he jumped up and he was, those kind of things? They want moments that they can relive when they're having conversations with their friends and all of. And those are the kind of things that you need to bring it into your film before you even consider going to the community cinema. And that's what Mayowa was saying. Because at the end of the day, it's really not, yes, the producer will come, market and push, but if the title too is not that kind of title that helps talkability, marketability, and word of mouth and all of those things, it's dead on arrival. You get what I'm saying? Which film can I, for instance, I don't know if anybody has seen The Green Mile. It's just, for instance, you saying you want to take maybe a Green Mile, or maybe Kunle Afolayan Swallow. You want to take Swallow to community cinema. They watch it and they'll be like, this is the normal life some people live to survive. And I'm showing this. Instead of them taking learnings from it, they begin to, these things are psychological. These things are, psychological. So you just want to go with grass to grace, happy comedy, love, romance, all those kind of good stuff. Those are the things you want to really go test out in the community cinemas. And we had a lot of that in Ikechukwu too.
My research gives me a bit of a different picture. I'm not saying generally now, because some of the interviews I have carried out with people in the course of looking into the film audience, it was very interesting. The responses that people were saying, I mean, this thing you just said about is ordinary life. People don't want to see ordinary life. But you know that a good number of people watch these films to learn. So some of them say, yes, this is exactly what happened to me. And it showed me how to deal with this situation. Somebody else says, well, I go to watch these films because they teach me about life, how to comport myself. Another one says, well, in this film, I saw this kind of situation in which this woman was attacked by her mother or whatever, and it prepared me such that if I see this kind of thing in future, I will know how to deal with it. And I think that this is something really that helped the Nollywood films to grow from the very beginning, because people were able to self-identify, to be able to say, well, this reminds me exactly of my situation. This is the kind of things I face, this, so on and so forth. That's why really I wonder if people will always want to see something that takes them away. Okay, because I know that some people, this is why some of our people say that, well, Hollywood is not for me because I don't identify. Is that they say it clearly, it's not for me. No, but this other ones, yeah. So does this ring a bell with you? Does it make sense to you
Well,
that I say this?
yeah, it does make sense if I'm watching on YouTube and I don't have to pay any money. I mean, we all go to YouTube to learn. You get what I'm saying? Like, why would I want to pay 4,000 naira for you to tell me about my life that I already know? I mean, yes. I mean, at the end of the day, right? The story you are trying to tell me about the person who has problems, at the end of the day, it's one of two things. His problem would either be sorted with money, which he will get by himself, or somebody will come and change his life or her life.
Hmm.
You get what I'm saying? So it's, I mean, yeah, you will see it. And then you need to see who are the people that we're making this statistical analysis off of or based on. Are they the people that we have in the communities out there, in the cinemas? Or are they people like, I don't know if you get what I'm trying to say, but I'm just trying to say that if it is free, no problem. Even if it is 5 hours, put it on YouTube. We will watch. We will pause and come back. If we can't even finish it that day, we'll come back 3 days after to watch it. It's fine. So, and if you talk about, back in the day, films that really took us far as Nollywood, when you begin to ask questions or you begin to check, what's his name? Osofia in London. You have Ake and Popo. You have films, Zebedru, Domitila, and all those kind. Yes, Domitila had all those things, but if you still check those things, they had elements of comedy. They had elements, those takeaway scenes that up till today people still talk about. This Babawande's film, Toluwalonile, Kolade. I don't know if you heard of it one time. There was Yemi in the Moon. Oh, okay, those are like old titles, old Nollywood titles. And there are some people who are, who lived then that still live now. And when you ask them, what do you remember about Yemi Alade, or sorry, Yemi My Lover, or a film by Babawande, they'll tell you, is that place where he had his agbada on and he was jumping on the cups and saying, all those kind of things, because people need those memorable points where they can either laugh, reflect, or it's a thing of excitement for them, So it could go both ways, but you want to be safe because it is money. and it's not free money to make film these days. Investors are on your neck too.
But let me put this one to Mayowa.
Yeah.
Where does the role of, understand my use of the word, educating the audience. I'm not saying educating the audience in terms of morality or anything of the sort. No, but if you would say you want to train an audience thinking about the future of filmmaking, that you say, okay, I want to educate this audience, prepare them for other kinds of genres, introduce them, such that at the same time, you are also preparing the future of distribution or filmmaking. Does that come into play in the considerations of a distribution company, that you're also thinking about, yes, creating grounds for future films by also training the audience in, or rather educating the tastes of the audience, if that question makes sense to you?
I think those have already been in place with critics when they watch movie and help you. You see a lot of conversations around genres, around if it's a marketable film, educating the audience is just still publicizing this information. If it's
Right.
filmmakers, we have master classes, we have something like this that we are doing where we educate producers, directors, screenwriters. But if it's the audience, do we invite them into a hall to say, let's train you about a genre? No, it has to still be publicized. When a film comes out, you have critics talking about the film and giving different examples. Like My Father's Shadow had a lot of inputs because of the kind of film and also based on the kind of awards the film got. It's a totally different genre. In fact, the first time I watched it, I did not totally understand, but I needed to also go read. There's no way we can train them except we have these things publicized online. And I saw a comment in somebody commented and was asking about films like A Tribe Called Judah, Ajoshepo. They are not really the standard films, in terms of quality. I think what sells for those movies are the stars in the movie. It is the star power. It's like a funke that is selling. It is a Kayode Kasum that is selling and not the film. And that's where marketing also comes to play. There are certain films that are not really good, but they still do the number, which is why in all of these conversations, we cannot throw away the impact of marketing and publicity of your film.
Okay, thank you so much. Mohammed, there is a
Sorry,
question.
sorry,
Actually, there are a couple of
I just
questions for
want
you.
to. I'm seeing, and I just want to speak
Yes,
on them.
sorry, let me
Yeah.
just read them out so everybody gets
Okay.
the questions. The first one is filmmakers often, this is from Godwin. Godwin is asking, filmmakers often maintain that distribution and exhibition channels available to them influence their creative and production decisions. So what criteria do cinemas use when selecting films for screening? Why are films produced for cinema release often so expensive to make? What are the key cost drivers associated with theatrical productions? That's a 3-in-1 question. Please go ahead, Mohammed.
Okay. So Godwin, you know what? Let me just. I will answer this with a story. I used to think, when I was in the background, when I was, I used to think all you had to do was have a fantastic idea, a very beautiful idea, have a fantastic crew, get a film crew, just get your actors, go and shoot. And when you are done shooting, you have the best film in your mind. In fact, your family tells you that it is oh my God, they've never seen anything like this. It's new in the industry. And then you get to, I'm just saying, a cinema distributor, and he says, oh, fantastic. This looks good. I love the story. But who are the stars in it? And then that's the first question. Who are the stars in it? There's no star. It might be difficult to sell, but we will still try. Cinemas will not turn down your film. It's an agreement. If you have an agreement with the cinema, they will take your film, and their role is to distribute. They will not turn down, except the quality does not meet the standard that is meant for distribution. They will distribute any film. But the question now is that, is your film marketable? What makes your film marketable? Because at the end of the day, if you put a film at the cinema, they are running diesel, they are running staff costs, they are running all of that, and then you have only one person come to watch your film. Why do you think they should still keep your film in the cinema? If there's another person like a Funke who has over 16 million followers on Instagram who can make one post and say, go and watch my film at so place, and out of those 16 million people, about 2,000 will answer. I have only 1,000 people on Instagram. If I were to post, I don't think 10 people will see. So you really want to think about all those things. And if you're a filmmaker who wants to probably have Funke on your production, do you know how much that's going to cost you? It's not even about her fee when you are negotiating her fee with her. When she comes on your set, that's an economy on its own as well. The food she eats, how you take care of her, the security that you have to put around her, all that is cost that is going to be in the film. Now, when the filmmaker now says, you know what, I want maybe Funke Toyin, I also want Latif, I also want a Deyemi Okonlawon. That's just your casting budget. Your casting budget alone can make another film for someone. So at the end of the day, you know, it's like, you know, there's something Kolade said. We are creating structures, building structures, and tweaking them as we go. We are not at a place where, you know, you can say, I'm just going to have 100 million and then this is the type of film I will get at 100 million. At this point where we are now, it's not possible. Because how do you want to do it? An actor probably tells you he wants 10 million or 15 million, and that's just one. And your film is not a monologue, it's not one actor now. And you can't get one A-list actor and say, okay, you want to make every other person an extra that you're going to pay 10,000 naira. If I'm an A-list actor, I won't answer you because you just want me to suffer. So, what criteria do? Yes, so that's it. What is your film marketable? And that's why when you start thinking of making a film, it's one of two things. It's either you make the best film with the best story with different techniques that even when the Oscar people see it, they'll be like, oh, this is new. I've never seen this before. Or you make it marketable using commercial actors if you are going to the cinema. You see, this is not even a case of Nigeria. It is globally. They will tell you if you want your Black American film to do well in the cinemas, use Will Smith. They will tell you. Studios will let you know. So this is not a situation of why is Nigeria's situation like this, and it is obtainable everywhere. The commercialization of your film depends on the production value you put on it. The production value on your film are cast, look and feel, production design, and the end quality in post-production. There are some people that God has blessed, you know, to achieve these things at low cost. Maybe not particularly low cost, or they are just gifted. People like Biodun Steven. You know, you can call Biodun somebody like it's not like she's not a big time producer or director. She is, but you know, somebody like, and they are very few. They are not a lot. So if you want to aspire to be like a Biodun Steven, yes, you need to first of all know what kind of filmmaker do you want to even be in the first place. Do you want to be a Christopher Nolan? Do you want to be a Kemi Adetiba? Do you want to be a Jade type or a Kemi type? Or do you want to be a Biodun Steven type where, you know what, let's start small, but give them something mind-blowing. Then when we now get to that stage where we are now big and people now know our name, we don't care. We will dole out the cash. So that's the thing. I don't know if I've been able to answer your questions on this, but if there's still anything you need me to elaborate on, please let me know. And then the second person said, our audience. Yes, I agree. The question was, your answer assumes that every audience demography has the same taste. The audience don't grow. No, that's not what I'm trying to say. The audience does grow. The audience grows. But the thing is, I'll take myself as an example. I mean, I was in traffic 4 hours today. And then, probably I got lunch. I really didn't like the lunch I had. I'm telling you what a typical Nigerian day probably is for not everybody, but for most people. So it's not like it's a structured environment that everything just. So I come back home tired, and I need a film to just ease me into, having a fantastic evening. You think I want to watch a film that is telling me about the hardship of Nigeria or the hardship that I've been through during the day? I don't think that's what I'm going to do. It doesn't mean I haven't grown as an audience to know. There are times that I can watch that. And the time I will watch that is probably not your showtime at the community cinema or in the cinema. Don't forget, the cinema controls the time that I watch the film. I don't. I might not be in the mood to watch it at that time. I don't know if you're understanding. Yes, I do understand that palettes are different. People have enjoyed different tastes, but you need to think about like how many of the people, the audience, how many of your audience would like this particular film to the audience that you already feel would like it. You can never, you see, the industry, and again, let me even just, it's so, you can't come and say you even know it all in the industry. Even America is still learning. They have issues. Is it because they have better ways or they have better PR of handling the issues that they are going through? They never bring them as issues like we do here. They bring them as how do I put it? They will make them sound like scholastic problems that people should come and talk about. And then in the things people say, they find answers. But here, I'm not trying to say we condemn. But it's almost like when there are issues, instead of us to have conversations about, okay, so I see this issue. I think what we need to do is find ways to resolve this issue. It's more about, the Nigerian distribution, this is the problem. The Nigerian production, this is the problem. Every time it's about problems, let's talk solutions. Let's talk solutions. So I do understand what you're trying to say, but that's not what I meant. But I'm just trying to tell you that if I'm going to pay money to watch a film, it has to be very good, because the margin for spending money now is not, hey man, I mean, you are working for your money. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, Kolade, I mean, Mayowa, you can chip in here if I'm not, maybe if I'm off the mark, but if I'm going to spend money, I want to spend money knowing that it was money well spent. That's all I'm just going to say.
No,
Right.
you are correct.
Okay.
You are very correct. And one thing I want to add, the part that a lot of people don't see for filmmaking also that is a major cost is the cost of renting equipment, the cameras, the setting up the stage, everything. Like people, I don't know why people don't talk about it enough, but equipment is extremely expensive. So that's also one thing that has to cost. And yet, someone enjoying something on YouTube is different from someone that will pay their money to watch it. That's why, honestly, a lot of times I attend almost every premiere in Nollywood, but I don't go and watch the film for audience reaction because all of them there, they are watching it for free. They came there and they are watching it for free. Of course, they will say good things now. Let's wait until the opening weekend where people have paid their money to watch it. That's when you know if the audience likes it or not. And yes, because honestly, the economic situation isn't great. People aren't going to watch your film based on, oh, I saw this nice advert somewhere. It's mainly word of mouth. Like Call of My Life, for example, the very strong word of mouth. It's the only film this year, and I think plus last year, only film this year that the opening weekend was lower than the first week and the second week. Like the Call of Mouth just kept on, the word of mouth just kept on taking it up, and people for cinema purchases mainly go for word of mouth. Yes.
Right.
Equipment cost is insane.
Yeah, only
Great.
equipment, just lights, camera, what's the name? sound, everything. When you put everything together, it's some people can make 3 films with this budget. Oh. In fact, there are some people that you will give, they will make 10 films with this budget. But this 55 million is for just one cinema film. Just the budget for just equipment, just to say, let's have 2 cameras for a period of 40 days.
Right.
You know?
Great.
Yeah.
Great. Well, there's a question here from Oluwafumbi. Maybe you can take that, Mayowa. I think this is probably more up your line. It says, do you collaborate with influencers who have highly engaged communities? What has your experience been with this approach?
Yes, yes, yes. We collaborate with them, and especially for movies where they don't have all the A-list actors. You know, some of the things that cinema look out for is they want this cast to come out for meet and greet. So if a film does not have the Funke, the Bimbo, and the likes, we have to now branch out to say, okay, let's get influencers that when they post online, they have their own community that will come out to see the film. So we 100% collaborate with influencers, with bloggers, with everybody in the media space that can push a content to the right audience.
Fantastic. Thanks very much. Well, Kolade, let me come back to you. There's something you said earlier about the need to build trust for people to really trust in the system and the structures which you're putting in place. Now, how can data from digital ticketing, the automation tools, etc., how can this help in terms of making people trust more? Does data here, this awareness of the data or knowledge of the data, does it help in this regard?
Yes, it honestly does. It honestly does, and that's where honestly I had small beef with circuits. I mean, the beef has gone now, but I had small beef with circuits on last year because we're like, okay, you've said you are making this amount of money. Can we see breakdown or something? Because like one thing I would not fault. So you can call me a cinema. Let's say you can call me a cinema industry rat because obviously I started at film house. I've been inside the depths of it to understand what's going on there. But one thing they have been getting right is the data. Posting the Nigerian box office numbers, giving you, then Film One came out with their own release. We even are doing a collaboration with popular account, Nigerian box office accounts. We are going to take it over, rebrand it a bit to the Nigerian Film Intelligence platform. We're going to be posting data daily on box office numbers per region, per film. We also released FilmX for producers and distributors only. It's a mobile app where they can check their own numbers with a detailed breakdown of their box office numbers only, because we were communicated to by the industry that, yeah, we cannot show filmmakers the revenue that other filmmakers are making in detail, but they can just see, okay, this is the top 10, top 20 films that this thing would make. So the data definitely brings in trust. Up until now, I still hear conversations from people saying they don't believe Funke actually made this number, or they don't believe Timini made this number, or they don't believe. The one I heard that they believe is Call of My Life because they've seen the word of mouth motion. But I would have been telling you, oh, like the boy you gave, or the Creek that Blue Pictures distributed, that they don't believe it because the Creek had empty seats in Lagos. But I'm like, the Creek made money in Rivers, Genesis Port Harcourt, now Port Harcourt, box office Port Harcourt, Delta. That's where this film made money in. But because you don't have the data, you doubt it. And it is extremely important for our industry that the data is there. But then on the flip side is that I have come to the very hard realization that Nigerians don't want to pay for data, for quality data. And I'm sure in academia, you can definitely relate to that one too. That, oh, look, I've done all of this, I've done all the hard work. Oh, you're paying now. But like, no. And mainly because they are deciding if I pay for this data will not give me food the next month. So how will it work out? But yes, it is extremely important. That's why we are also investing in that data infrastructure. Later in the year, we are going to release the Nigerian movie database where someone can actually go and view all of the interactive content there. I mean, this is my shout out that I would love to work with Nollywood Study Center on this so that they can have archive of films up until the very early years so people can actually see how the industry has grown. And then also we are working with the CAN to also turn the CAN website into a data platform. So a lot of investment from our side is going into this to ensure that, look, the data is accessible so that people can actually make good business decisions in the business of film and build that trust. And also, another thing is people don't understand. So whenever people hear this film has made 1.2 billion, they think, Funke has carried this 1.2 billion. Even Funke had to come out and say, oh, no, it's not the whole 1.2 billion that is going to me. Out of that money, 12.5% is going to tax. Cinema will collect 45 or 50%, depending on the sharing ratio. Then there's still withholding tax that will go to the government after that one. And then we can now see what the producer has after it. And that information too should be out there. But what we are going to share is we're just going to give you like a flat 50-50, which is the industry standard. We are not going to give you specifics of this is what this film actually did, just so that there is a lot more enlightenment into the profitability of the film, which leads to the sustainability of it. And eventually, if it's profitable and sustainable, and there's a lot of data, the confidence will become very sky high.
Fantastic. I mean, what you said is thrilling. I mean, to be able to have access to that kind of data will be fantastic. But do you face also that response of people who say, even when you present the data, they say, no, it's fabricated? I have heard something like that some people say, no, this data is fabricated. How do you deal with that?
So that is very, I think, so I had a conversation with some of the top distributors on this issue. And they were like, they keep on sensitizing people. And I told them point blank, I think this is not like a hero complex or anything, but I think it is, I am in the best position to do that because it is our software that actually accounts for over this 65%. So anytime someone tells me data is fabricated, that is an existential threat for me, because that means that the software you're using is not accurate. That means the software you're using shouldn't even exist in the first place. So, which is why we made all of those data investments to take it up and let you know that, look, if you even want to see real-time data, we can give you, just so that you know that this thing is there. Just that this thing is important for them. So eventually, there'll still be naysayers. There'll still be people that will say the data is fabricated. But with the investments that we are putting in place for that to happen, hopefully by the end of the year, I call those conversations low-quality conversations, honestly. Hopefully by the end of the year, those low-quality conversations will stop happening. And the real quality conversations will be, how will I make a film like The Creek that I can get my complete ROI from the South alone? Or like The Boy You Gave also did very well in the South. How do I make a film like King of Thieves 2 that Southwest alone will cover my budget and then some? And how do we properly tap into Kannywood up north? Because everybody keeps on saying it's a potentially huge market to community cinemas, but nobody can confidently come out and say, this is what I've made from it. So yes, people saying the data is fabricated, hopefully by the end of the year, we can leave those conversations behind.
Well, that would be great. I think it will be a great addition to the industry to be able to have that as a platform. Let me come back to you, Mohammed, back to that question of the kinds of films that are made. Now, one would assume that with community cinemas, we will be able to, well, no, not we will be able to, but community cinemas will facilitate the further development of indigenous language films, because then you can target specific communities and say, well, I'm making this film for this group and I expect to make this much based off this group. Is that a reality? Would that be something accurate to say?
I mean, it's in the future. It's what we're building. Pretty much, I mean, that has to be the mindset, right? We have to have that mindset to state that in the next 5 years, we want a situation whereby local, films with local origins, can producers, producers can beat their chest and say, okay, this community cinema is a place where I know I can thrive. You understand? Like that's the ecosystem. That's what we attain to do. That's what what we aspire to achieve in the future. Because right now, even when you talk about conventional cinemas, you can't just come out and say you are going to the cinema. In fact, you can't even come out and just say you are going to the cinema at a particular point in time. Right now, when you say you are going to the cinema, the first question is when. If you make a mistake and say December, people will just look at you like, are you normal? That's the question. Like, are you normal? There's Poker in December. There's Toye in December. What are you going to sell? So at the end of the day, you just need to begin to, build that pipeline where, and I'll go back to, the structure that they have abroad. You would literally see a producer and you can say, okay, this is a box office producer. You can literally see a producer and say, this one is a B-lister, or, they have that list and they have it categorized clearly, which is, I would say it's there here, but it's also about the monetization and the fact that you are now able to grow your craft in that space. So yes, in the future, in the very, very near future, that's all.
Great, thank you. Well, we're entering into the last 15 minutes we have now. So let me just ask one final question to each one. Well, Mayowa, let me start with you. This one's for you. If you, as a distributor, wanted to sign up someone or sign up a location as a potential space for community cinemas, what minimum technical standards would you be looking for in order to say, yes, you will be one of our platforms for distribution? What minimum technical standards would you look for?
Well, if it's for community cinemas, now we are not looking at the major technical equipment like sound and screens, because you normally wouldn't expect them to have a standard screen or sound that you need. So what we would be looking out for, first of all, is the location, the environment, to see if it's going to be profitable for whatever film we want to put in this space. We're also looking at the capacity of the hall. Based on conversations we've been having, we are hearing that we shouldn't exceed 250 in a particular location as sitting capacity. So we are looking at that. We are looking at the convenience. We are looking at it's like maybe the ACs, the chairs they have, how comfortable it's going to be. So that's majorly what we are looking at for community cinemas. Because again, we are also trying to partner with some technical partners that would provide us screens and sound and print, P&A for promotion. What we're looking at majorly is just the space, the location, the environment, how profitable it's going to be for content.
Sorry, you mentioned ACs now. If I were to offer you a hall which has just fans, would I qualify?
I don't think you would qualify because again, if you are in community, you still wanted to have a feel of a standard cinema, even though it's not standard, like the way the chairs are arranged and all. If you are giving us fans and they're going to be blowing themselves in the oil, it's not a good experience. It's bad PR for community cinemas, so at least that convenience has to be there.
Why I ask that question is because I'm thinking of a community cinema in some forgotten village somewhere where there's poor power supply and you will not find optimal facilities. Does that mean that in such places we will not be able to organize?
There were scenarios where we had to take our own like generator, like mobile ACs, just for the convenience of the people. So if we have to do that, maybe we would now consider, also depending on the price that want to rent out the hall, we can now look at those pros and cons. Okay, so if you're giving us the offer so amount, and we are bringing this generator, like a mobile ACs, how do we benefit? If it is something that works for us, then why not?
I'm sorry to push the point, but I'm just rather wondering if you're going to have to travel with a generator and mobile ACs, will in the long run, will that not bring us back to where we're trying to run away from, which is
No,
cost?
but we won't
We're
travel from
increasing the
Lagos.
cost.
Yeah, but we won't
let me
travel.
even comment on Mayowa here. So one thing that with Blue Pictures that we were doing when we were doing the community cinemas, for I guess you call it pretty much, was in any state that we were, we made sure that power, logistics were things that we had on lockdown. We had recs in every state. So you really didn't. I mean, things are expensive in Lagos. When you now go outside Lagos, things are relatively, I don't want to say cheaper, but I mean, you wouldn't get things outside Lagos the same cost you would get them in Lagos, which is a thing where if you are definitely going to release in a community cinema, and that's why it is still a producer kind of conversation. Where is your strength? Where are your people? Where do you have that clout? Where is it that if we come to this location, we know we won't have any frictions or we don't want to be having those challenges? Because at the end of the day, you saying you are going for community cinemas, not just that you stand up and say you want to go do community cinemas. There are things you assess. There are things you have to assess. You have to assess for power. You have to assess for visibility. You have to assess accessibility even to the hall. It's something you need to assess for. So those are kind of like things we all take into consideration before we lock any hall down to say this has become a venue for what we are doing.
Great. Well, Kolade, let me turn to you. Different question. Like I said, I'm asking last questions here. Now, given all that you've done so far, all that you're projecting to do, what do you think stakeholders should be focusing on in order to facilitate this growth? Stakeholders from policymakers, academia, industry practitioners. What really should we all be putting in place to facilitate this? Because like you have rightly said, we've been talking about community cinemas forever. Okay, but now that somebody is doing something, what do you think the rest of us should now be contributing to facilitate this growth?
I think, and it's a very difficult one. I think it's a mindset shift, first of all. The honest thing is the willingness to lose money. And I'll explain why. So in Nollywood in a year, from cinema theatrical, there are only maybe 5 films in a year that would make pure profits from cinema alone. That's after the deductions minus the cost they've made profits on it. Now, that also affects community cinema, because part of the reasons why I've seen a lot more producers ask about community cinemas is because they are losing a lot of money in cinema, but they do not realize that the chance of you making that money back community cinema is equally slim because the ticket prices are lower. Now, distributors have this thing called the minimum ticket price you must sell their tickets for. And the mechanics behind it actually make sense. So if a distributor only makes, let's say, 5% from a film's gross box office, the higher ticket price makes more sense for them. But then you will counter it by saying, oh, the lower price, the increase in supply would lead to higher revenue, which will lead to higher percentage a distributor will get from that film and higher percentage a filmmaker will get from that film. But then we all know the adage of cash in hand, bird in hand is better than the bird inside the forest. So they are looking at it from a point of view of, oh, look, I don't want to lose money. So how will this allow me make more money? But then want them to know that, look, you will most likely lose money on this. In fact, you will lose money for the first year, second year, maybe even the third year, until this thing becomes a staple in the Nigerian market before it really takes off. Then the second part is on the government. The government has tried in the area of punishing piracy, but it needs to be even more, it needs to be even steeper. Like, take, for example, that trust thing I talked about for Convoy, we had to sign agreements with the distributors that for some films, if it leaks, we will be the ones to bear liability until we find the person that leaked that film and then transfer the liability to them. There is a foreign competitor that does what we do, but at a much higher price. But they don't have that same requirement. But because they're like, oh, Kolade, we can see you, we can hold you, you will bear the liability. And just based off of that alone, assuming there was a framework by the government, no, government enforced. It doesn't have to be by the government, but government enforced framework. Yeah, look, if you can find this person, you can get police without having to pay police extra money in 24 hours, come and pick this person up, parade this person, get that film, get that file back from this person. Then it enforces a lot more trust in the system that if my film leaks, I am not on my own. And then also on the cinema side, as Mayowa has been, no, sorry, it was Mohammed that has been saying it, that look, community cinema is not a replacement of cinema, it's an enhancement. I think cinema owners and some big chains are actually having that conversation, but then again, it's just conversation of setting up their own community cinema chain, their own low-cost community cinema chain. The same way FMCG will have Pick Milk and we have Laughing Cow. I'm trying to remember the name, Cool Cow, in the same brand. Like, oh, you can have your big brands, you can have your big screens, but you can also have a smaller set of community cinema screens. So those are the three things that need to happen to support this. And even me, for myself, it's our company can't do it alone because we've tried that thinking, let's go all gung-ho, let's go in it together. But no. So what we are focusing on is the infrastructure that can make everything possible digitally. Your content safe, your numbers are accurate, your payment will come in on time. As long as you can solve those three foundational problems and everybody pitches in, this would definitely really blow up.
Fantastic. Great response. Thank you. Well, Mohammed, I come to you last, certainly not the least. What advice would you give a young entrepreneur or a community group that wants to establish a community cinema in a space or in their space?
It's pretty simple. If you want to establish a community cinema, wow, it's big. It's not easy. You have to know that it is not easy first. But the next thing you need to understand also is you need to understand the business of it. You need to be in a place where your locations must have power. Your locations have to be very accessible. Your location in whatever town that you are or you intend to use, your location must be that location where when they say it's December 1, whether people like it or not, people are already, running there. A place like that is a ShopRite. Back in when ShopRite was really operational, you would think ShopRite is just a place where you can just go and buy groceries and all of that. But I was blown away when I went to a ShopRite, a festive period, and I saw people snapping pictures on the escalators. And I'm like, wow. So you really want to have those kind of assessments. You understand? There's more which I can share, but I don't think there'll be enough time for me to start getting into those details. But these are the most important things for you to think about if you want to start setting up a community cinema space. And then all the best. Get the best films and just market. The type of marketing we didn't do. We were on social media, we're on social media, but we didn't went like on social media paying all the big blogs because not all the people that we are trying to get are on, So what we did was pretty much almost going to knock on people's doors. I was with Femi in Ife. I was with Femi, I think Mayowa, yeah. We were with him in Ibadan. We literally told Femi, this is not us, doing any content on social media because our people want to see us one-on-one. Like we literally went to see markets and then we're having conversations with the women. And they were like, Tabawa, sorry, this is Yoruba. Tabawa Shamari, if we are there, will we see you? Say, yeah, you will see us. And then what we did, it wasn't Femi because Femi couldn't be everywhere. But there were some of the actors that actually went to the community cinemas to watch, and people were happy having them there. A case in point, Ilorin. In fact, Ilorin was crazy. Ilorin just seemed like the cradle of Adeshukole in a way. The halls every time, people going in and coming out. Why? Because of the Adebayos. So you really want to know the people you are working with, the producer's film you're going to take, the kind of content you want to take, and then all of those parameters for the place you want to use. And then if that's it, you're all set and you're good to go. But, like Kolade said, because the fact that it worked for one person is not an automatic thing that it would work for everybody else. So that thing of entering with the mindset that you may lose money, still have it at the back of your mind. So that you don't think that, now this is foolproof. Let me just go in. And then you go and dive in because what works for A may not be what works for B. And I think that's still something that a lot of marketing people are not understanding in the film industry as well. Because if you see the call of my life, the way Blessing went about the marketing, it's quite different and unique from what we have seen with Tribe Called Judah and other titles like that. And that's why it's still raking in those numbers, which is something that a lot of filmmakers need to also begin to understand. You don't need to go and pick another person's playbook. Develop your own. You may miss it the first time, but when you crack it, it becomes your playbook. That's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mohammed. But I think it's good to stress just what you said about what works for one person may not work for another, that it will be good to identify what the variables are. There are some fixed variables, I would believe. If you're looking at the community cinema structure, there are some fixed variables, which I think will be the same for everybody. But many times it will then be the film itself. What film are you offering to your people, which will be, for me, the major variable. Okay, like you say, choose what works for this group of people, so on and so forth. But in terms of the structure of the community cinema, it should work across board, really, in that sense. Great. Well, thank you all very much. Thank you all so much for your contributions, your responses. This has been a fascinating conversation. Kolade, Mohammed, and Mayowa, we are truly enlightened. Well, we look forward to the great things ahead. I'm going to hold on to you, Kolade, for what you have promised us in terms of data provision, because I think that will be something fantastic, because that will really make a world of difference if we have data like that. So once again, thank you all so much. Thank you all so much. And thanks to our audience. And I wish you all a fantastic the rest of the Saturday.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
All right,
all the best.
Bye,
all right. Bye.